Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jennifer Pattison, Tuohy of The Verge is here. We talk about how a bunch of cameras are exposed to the internet and how Wyze is updating its security practices. Afterward, we talk about addictive tech use and its impact on mental health, and round things out with a story about that Trump mobile phone. All of that coming up on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 392, with Jennifer Pattison, Tuohy, and me, Mikah Sargent. Recorded Thursday, June 19th, 2025. 40,000 reasons to check your camera security. Hello, and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking that tech news. I am one of your hosts this week. My name is Mikah Sargent, and today, joining us for this episode of Tech News Weekly is Jennifer Pattison, Tuohy of The Verge. Welcome back, Jen.
Hello, hello. Happy to be back. It feels like it's been a while. Well, it's because you were on vacation.
Exactly, yes. And that was what happened the last time. How was your vacation? It was nice. It was good to take some time and get some R&R, but I am happy to be back. And yeah, it does feel like it's been forever. Yeah. So thank you for being here in my place at the time, and now being here again. We've got a lot to get to this week. It's a story of the week packed show, and I am really looking forward to talking to you about especially our first two topics, because they fall into the interests and in some cases passions that we both enjoy. So a sweeping investigation by cybersecurity firm BitSight, reported by 404 Media, reveals that more than 40,000 internet-connected cameras, from office security systems to baby monitors and even hospital patient rooms, are accessible to anyone with a browser and the right IP address. Many don't require hacking. They're simply left unsecured, often using default settings or login credentials. And the result? It's a staggering breach of privacy across homes and businesses and public spaces, with footage surfacing on the dark web and being used in real-world espionage and cyber attacks. So in looking at this report, this was kind of wild to see the number. BitSight identified 40,000 plus live camera feeds open to the public. I mentioned hospitals, offices, data centers, jewelry stores, clinics, bird feeders. That one maybe makes a lot of sense. But it was just as often found in a large organization as it was found in a home, with, of course, the most egregious examples being the cameras they found in hospitals and clinics that were actually monitoring patients. In this research, the report identified the most exposed devices in the US, followed by Japan, and there were camera feeds found across all 50 US states. Even some protected cameras were also able to be accessed. And that meant that even though they had these protections in place that were supposed to keep the camera from being able to be accessed, it didn't matter, because the researchers had ways of getting to those cameras. And I kind of want to talk about that, because the research conducted was done so in a way to kind of mimic the ability of anyone with even the slightest bit of tech know-how. It wasn't any special hacking or trying to, insert some packet over the internet and hack into the system, or getting someone to plug in a flash drive. No. In many cases, it just took an IP address. And in some cases, it doesn't even take that, because there are websites and services out there that let you search for internet accessible devices that people have in their homes or elsewhere. And so with all of that, they kind of looked into how to find things looking at cameras that operated over HTTP. And in many cases, those would have a built-in web interface. They could then do something as simple as typing after the URL /out.jpg, because a lot of these cameras have similar firmware, and so they work a lot alike, and they output these little screenshots of what they're seeing. And if you get enough of those, you can really start to get a picture of what is going on. And then there were also the real-time streaming protocol cameras that are more likely used in kind of professional systems. And those also have very common paths like live.sdp and /mpeg4. And then the researchers were able to take that data and turn it into a series of images or video to be able to get that. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about what the researchers found in terms of how people were using these and everything else. But I wanted to get your early impression of this, Jen, because I know as someone who has been interested in the smart home, I regularly hear from people who say, why would you put any of that stuff in your house? It's going to, result in you getting hacked, or someone's going to be watching you. What is your kind of response to that in general, and then your reaction to hearing about all of these cameras?
So my response to the first question is choose wisely. There are cameras that you can buy that are far more secure, and there are cheap cameras that you buy off the web for $30 that are going to end up on someone's collection of streaming video cameras that people sit and watch and eat popcorn and enjoy seeing into people's homes. And this is not new. So it is scary and awful to read this report. But if you even click into the report, it says in 2023, we found the same thing. And in 2022, I mean, this has been going on for years. What is scary is that it is still going on. Like, we should have learned, people should have learned, companies should have learned, this shouldn't still be happening. But it is common, and it has been happening for a long time. Often when I talk to security researchers, and the question I always ask is, what is the biggest threat or concern users should have about using smart devices in their homes? Because it's a question I get asked a lot, not just around cameras, but around hacking in general, because, there's the whole concern around like DDoS attacks or people getting into your networks and controlling your smart appliances. And so there's a lot of concerns around connecting devices in your home to the internet. And yes, this is something that has been happening for a long time. And what they often, the answer that they always give me is, oh, well, security cameras are your biggest concern, because there are literally websites you can go onto and just join and see live feeds from people's nurseries and their gardens and wherever else they've put security cameras. I mentioned gardens because one of my top tips with security cameras is keep them outside. Yes. But Same, yeah, baby cams, obviously there's a lot of use cases, pet cams when you're away from home. There are reasons that people want these devices. But in terms of your second question there, what can be done about it? You need to buy cameras with good security track records. If you notice, the two protocols that they mention in this report are HTTP, which is missing a very crucial letter from it. Do you know which one that is?
Where's the S? For goodness sake, why is it not encrypted?
Thank you. And then RTSP. Now, RTSP is not as bad, but it's the way you use it. It's actually quite a common tool in smart home cameras to stream to local storage. But if you're streaming to local storage, you're not going on the internet. You're still somewhat vulnerable, because if someone hacks into your network, they can, it's more of an open channel. But hopefully you have much stronger protections on your network. And this is all about stronger protections. And this is all about the devices that you choose to put into your home. Most of the reputable security cameras you buy from reputable firms, reputable companies that cost more than $30 most of the time. You can get them on deals, but that come with subscriptions as well. That's sometimes considered a downside. They put money, time, effort into securing either end-to-end encryption or encryption in transit and at rest, which is what most cloud security services use, which encryption in transit and at rest, which means that it can't be hacked into as it's moving or when it's not being used. It is accessible to the company at some point so that they can process it for things like facial recognition or package alerts or those kind of features that some people value security cameras for. But yeah, that's, just don't buy cheap cameras off the internet. And I don't know what I think the issue with some of these large organizations, that hospitals and the others that are sort of mentioned in this report, are using probably old technology.
Yes,
they haven't updated
absolutely.
their cameras in years because it would cost a fortune to reinvest in that technology. And if it's working for them now, why would they change it? And they probably aren't alerted to these types of reports very often. So yeah, I'm sure my local hospital wouldn't really have spent much time on these sites and figured out what's going on. So yeah, there's these it's scary and it's bad, but it's not new. And it's been going on for a long time. And that's the scariest thing, is why this is still happening.
Absolutely. I mean, one of you very much hit on it. Legacy and abandoned cameras are still streaming online, and that was not a lot, but that was some of what BitSight saw, particularly the legacy side. And here is what I really liked, something that they talked about that I think people aren't thinking of first and foremost, because when you hear about your camera being accessed or a camera being accessed, your immediate thought is privacy, right? Mm-hmm. Someone's watching me through my camera. That's the bad thing. And that's the extent of it. And honestly, that is enough to sort of pay attention to this report. But let's talk about businesses who, as you said, maybe you're going, okay, they can see people walking through my store. I'm not going to update these cameras. They talk about what else is at risk here. With office cameras, you can suddenly expose confidential materials, employee activity. So, you're suddenly gaining access to papers that are talking about the company's profit or whatever it happens to be. Retail cameras that are accessed will help burglars time thefts or perhaps scope merchandise. In fact, there was one instance where they were able to look through and see a Porsche showroom that had some very fancy car in it. Factory feeds could reveal proprietary processes to competitors. And all of those are also reasons why you would want to have your camera situation figured out. And yes, so much of the time, what they found was just that people were not changing the default passwords, or yes, if they didn't need remote access, but they left it on. So if you don't need remote access, as you were just talking about, make it a local area network situation if you're going to be doing that RTMP, unless you do need to access it from external, and maybe consult a professional. Yes. Use firewalls, VPNs, of course, for corporate systems. You can also go about checking your own camera. Just hop on a different network and try to access it, or use one of these sites. I'm not going to mention any specific site or service. It's very easy to find that does publish this information and, shows these cameras that are kind of online. It's honestly not too difficult to get this sorted if you are taking a little bit of time and a little bit of attention to figure it out. And you do those things that Jen talked about and that this report talks about, of if you're going to do this, invest a little bit in it so that you aren't getting the cheapo devices that aren't going to be as concerned about security and the blowback therein, and then go from there. And when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about a company that is a bigger company in the sense that when blowback was initiated, the company kind of had to repair from that. So let's take a quick break and we'll talk about, I should mention before we do take that break, we'll of course link the report in the show notes. you should go check out the report. It's got loads of great information in there. And you can pass it along to any family members who don't like to change default passwords.
Yes, change your passwords.
Or buy the $6 camera, right? Set up 2FA. Yes, absolutely. All right. Let me tell you how appropriate about DeleteMe, who is bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. If you've ever wondered how much of your personal data is out there on the internet for anyone to see, and you went and looked, you were probably surprised that it's a lot more than you think. Your name, your contact information, in some cases, your social security number, your home address, even information about your family members are all being compiled by data brokers and sold online. Anyone on the web can buy your private details, and this can lead to identity theft, to phishing attempts, to doxing, to harassment. But now you can protect your privacy with DeleteMe. You know, I'm a person who exists publicly online, and I do share my opinions and thoughts about all sorts of tech stuff. And because of that, I have to think about safety and security, not just for me, but also for the people that are in my life. It's easier than ever to find personal information about people online. And that is why I personally do use and do recommend DeleteMe. I have been very impressed with what it has been able to remove online, because there have been a couple instances where someone decided to try to reach out to someone close to me to get more information about me. And this is a person I don't know that's trying to get information about me. And because of the way that data brokers collect those links between people, they were able to get this information. Not fun, not good. We need to be able to get that stuff removed. And that's what I've been able to do with DeleteMe. It's a subscription service, and there's a reason it's a subscription service, because it removes your personal information from hundreds of data brokers and keeps doing it. And we'll talk about that in a minute as to why. You can sign up, you provide DeleteMe with exactly what information you want deleted. Their experts take it from there. It sends you regular personalized privacy reports showing what information they found, where they found it, and what they removed. And it's not just a one-time service. This is the important part. It's always working for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want on the internet, because those data brokers will continue to grab and hold on to and sell that information. To put it simply, DeleteMe does all the hard work of wiping your and your family's personal information from data broker websites. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for DeleteMe at a special discount for our listeners. Today, you can get 20% off your DeleteMe plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/twit and use promo code TWIT at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/twit and enter code TWIT at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/twit, code TWIT. And we thank DeleteMe for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, we are back from the break, joined this week by Jennifer Pattison Tuohy of The Verge. And it's time for your story of the week.
Yeah, so my story of the week concerns a similar space, which is security cameras, and it's at a different level. Thankfully, these security cameras are a little bit more secure than the ones we were just discussing, but that doesn't mean they're completely fail-safe. And what has happened here is the security company, smart home company Wyze, which has been around for several years and is well known for producing high-quality, low-cost smart home devices, primarily security cameras, but they also have a number of different devices in the smart home, including like door locks and lights and scales, everything, all sorts of things. Yeah. They do a lot. And they've always been a kind of interesting, quite innovative company, and very popular because their cameras are, or originally were, about $30. So hence my comment when we were talking about cheap security cameras earlier. These guys don't fall into the Chinese cheap categories on that you find online, but they have experienced several security issues in the last few years that caused a lot of backlash and concern from users. And just this week, they came out with a new system, a new feature for their security cameras called Verified Few, which is supposed to they have fixed the problems they they experienced earlier in 2023, 2024. But this is sort of like a fail-safe, proving to customers that if anything like that ever happened again, you still would be secure. Now, what happened in those incidents is that other people were able to see your live stream footage from your cameras, which is the number one thing people are concerned about having devices like this in their homes. So that was a big issue. What had happened was some type of third-party cloud caching company that they used had a failure, and then there was another failure, and it was kind of a domino effect. And users, when they logged into their accounts, saw other people's streams because there was some kind of cross on the back end. And obviously, no matter what happened, this is the fear. This is what you don't want. So what this new verified view feature is really kind of interesting. It takes your camera and it stamps your user ID metadata onto the camera, so that now anytime any footage is generated by that camera, a live stream, a video, or a photo, it stamps your metadata, your user ID metadata onto that. And then when you go to use it, to view it with your app or through any other, maybe through a third party, like if you're watching on a smart display, it has to verify, hence verified view, that you have that that you are that user using the embedded metadata. And this is actually quite clever. And it's essentially, does it sound familiar? Because do you want to know what I understand it's based on from some security people that I spoke to?
What's it based on?
DRM.
Oh, no way.
So it's like you have to verify that it's you. And it's basically it's a combination of a software and hardware, and it's really kind of an interesting technology that you could see being applied in many ways in our new world where we're concerned about the veracity of video and photos. Being able to sort of take this digital management tool elsewhere outside the smart home would be really interesting. But what Wyze has done here is basically, this is just for their cameras, and the idea being, whatever even if someone was able to hack or get access somehow to the stream because of a failure, so like the failure that they had with their cloud caching, they wouldn't be able to view your video because when they tried to access it, they wouldn't have your metadata. Now, of course, if they got access to your account, then they would be able to. So it doesn't prevent that. So Wyze at the same time, over the last few years since this happened, has talked about how they have spent a lot of time and money. And this is the key to security, is it does require time and it does require money. And companies that don't put in the time and the money are the ones that you should not be buying from. But they've put all this time and money into a slew of other features that most companies are already implementing that are in this space. And I think Wyze had a lot of these tools in place, but they've kind of beefed them up. So they now require two-factor authentication. A lot of companies make it an option. Two-factor authentication means that if someone tries to get into your account, you get alerted. And it is a pain. I know I kind of avoid turning it on sometimes.
It's like, oh boy, another
But
step.
this way, I constantly, if you constantly get notifications that someone's trying to log you, would you like to reset your Instagram password? No, I don't want to. I didn't ask to, but I have 2FA turned on. So every time someone tries to get into my accounts, I find out. So, cameras you need to have 2FA turned on. Wyze has also added a number of sort of back end features that they're not front facing to the consumer, but that will send alerts to the consumer if there is someone trying to access their account, and invested in a number of AWS tools that are kind of constantly scanning to see if there's any kind of network attack. So basically they're trying really hard to convince customers that their data is safe with them. Now, their data, compared to the companies we were just talking about, I would definitely say I would feel much more comfortable using a Wyze cam than using any of the cameras that the company, what was the research firm called? I'm trying to remember. BitSight.
Oh, BitSight,
that we just talked about. But there are still, there are still concerns. And the reasons there are still concerns is because Wyze is a cloud-based service. And this is something when you're talking about security cameras that you always have to kind of weigh. And Wyze is not alone in this. Most popular security camera brands out there today, Ring, Arlo, Wyze, they all use cloud storage. There are some options for local storage with all of those cameras and others, but generally most consumers go with the easy route, which is the cloud. That is the easy route. There are a lot of benefits to the cloud. You don't have to run a local server. You don't have to worry about dealing with security. In theory, it's all happening by the company that you're paying to do this for you. And that's generally you're paying a subscription service. The big benefit is the new advances we've seen with artificial intelligence in security cameras. So they are able to process more intelligently footage and send you much more detailed notifications, which is kind of interesting. Like now from my Wyze cam, I'll get an alert saying there's a chicken in your backyard as opposed to motion. So those kind of features, are a benefit of a cloud service. But I asked Dave Crosby, who is one of the co-founders of Wyze and who I spoke to for this article. I said, well, cloud services is great. And, a lot of people love these features, but there are a lot of people that would just rather have their footage end-to-end encrypted, which is what we talked about earlier. That is where the only person that can feasibly in any way access your footage is you using your device. It does create a little bit more friction in accessing your footage. It does, as he says, compromises the user experience. And their argument is that this verified view offers very similar protections to end-to-end encryption, but without compromising that experience. But really, it's down to your comfort level and also your technical knowledge of level, because E2E does create as a bit more friction, doesn't have as many features, but is arguably, and well, even he said, the holy grail for security cameras in terms of feeling secure with that in your house. And Apple HomeKit uses E2EE for its footage. But what the key difference that you need with E2EE is you need a local hub.
Yes.
And Apple Home uses local home hubs like a HomePod or Apple TV. And then there are some other companies like Eufy, who's also gotten into a fair amount of hot water with cloud issues in the past. They have a local device, a home-based system that you can use. And there are, I think Reolink and Lorex, a couple other companies, will have like an NVR system that you can set up. Those use RTSP, which is what we discussed before. But again, if you're using them on a local network, this is all so complicated.
Yes.
And confusing. And I can see why so many people, get burned by security cameras. But honestly, my advice from the start is the same now. It's like, if you want these cameras in your home, pay the extra money to buy it from a reputable company. Make sure that you change your passwords, you set up 2FA, you do all of that. And just point them outside.
Yes, that's the main thing, because then at the end of the day, they're seeing your chickens, but not much else, right? Whenever it comes to in a home setting, of course, that's a different situation at a store or a clinic or something like that, because even somebody walking outside, if they've got their discharge papers and the camera's able to zoom in on the patient ID number or whatever, like that's where y'all have got to get your stuff together in those settings. There should not have been a single clinic or medical anything on that list from earlier. I was going to mention too, funny enough, back in the olden days, you could actually go into your Wyze settings and turn on RTMP, and that's something.
And he's bringing that back. They said they're going to bring that back.
Really?
Yes, that was a little.
You heard it here second. I missed that part because that's really cool. I didn't realize that was going to be.
Yeah, he said that. So one of the other things we talked about was moving how much more they could move locally, because a lot of this AI stuff can be done locally. So you don't necessarily need the cloud for the AI processing, as we're doing more and more on the edge. And Wyze has a few cameras that can process certain things on the edge. They're the more expensive cameras. But he was talking about how the way they're working with the cloud is bringing they'll develop an AI identification model, use it in the cloud, refine it until they can move it to the edge, and then use that on the edge. But so this is kind of, a flywheel. So it has to start in the cloud and come to the edge, which is why he was saying we're always going to have a cloud component. Although you can use local storage for a Wyze Cam and not use that cloud at all, but it is not as good an experience as subscribing, mainly because they limit. There's like a 5-second or maybe even be a 5-minute cooldown between clips. So if someone walks by 5 minutes in between clips, you're not going to see them. So it's kind of
yes, and that's important.
I've seen, but just on the RTSP, he said he knows our users want this, and they are looking to bring it back. So there you go. You heard it here first. That is
exciting. Also, I'm just now realizing that I said MP. Yes. I think because the mounted police is what I was thinking of.
Oh, yay. Wait, what are they called?
What are they called? The something MP, the Mounties?
The Mounties, yes.
Yeah.
The Rocky Mountain, there was a TV show in the 90s.
That's it. For some reason, that's what came to my mind. But yes, RTSP. I was going to say, before we do have to take another break, there was one situation where I saw a person who clearly had knowledge about the limitations of a battery-powered Ring camera. This happened to me, where the person knew the timing for what happens by default between clips, such that what they didn't know was that I had another camera in a different place that was not battery powered, but I watched they walk up and trigger the camera, and then they waited and waited and waited and moved just within that frame of time before it picks up again, because it's a battery camera. So that was pretty clever. And again, most people are going to set things at the default. So if you're trying to steal a package or something like that, that's how they did it. But
that's really smart.
Yeah, it was clever. I thought, you know what? Maybe you deserve this package because you take it.
I don't interview on my tech show.
Exactly. I wish I could have found them. I said, listen, you can have what's in there. I just want to talk. All right. We got to take a break. We'll come back with even more. Up next, we're going to talk about a study on mental health and youth internet or youth technology use, and some surprising results. All right. Let me tell you, though, about Melissa, who's bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. Melissa is celebrating 40 years. Congratulations, as the trusted data quality expert. AI, it can transform businesses and industries of all types, from manufacturing and supply chain management to the healthcare industry. However, even the most advanced AI models can't correct underlying data quality issues. If you start with bad data, what are you going to do? That is where Melissa comes in. Imagine having a data expert who never sleeps. Melissa's intelligent system verifies identity to prevent fraud and gaming operations, ensures valid patient and medicine identification in healthcare systems, securely updates and verifies constituent data across government databases, and Melissa's Know Your Business enables verification and monitoring for financial institutions. Melissa's industry-leading data validation tools are now available on Microsoft Azure through Azure Data Factory. Organizations of all sizes can migrate existing SSIS packages to the cloud without disruption while accessing comprehensive data cleansing capabilities. You can scale data quality operations faster, reduce infrastructure overhead, and maintain existing enterprise data workflows within Azure's elastic, efficient, maintenance-free cloud environment. With real-time data validation, comprehensive enrichment, cross-reference verification with gold standard reference data, and intelligent anomaly detection, it's no wonder that Melissa is the trusted data quality expert worldwide. Melissa securely encrypts all file transfers and has an information security ecosystem built on the ISO 27001 framework, adherence to GDPR policies, and SOC 2 compliance. Contact Melissa's team to learn how they can elevate your business and improve your data quality. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. That's melissa.com/twit. All right, we are back from the break, joined this week by Jennifer Pattison Tuohy of The Verge, and we are moving along to a story of the week from yours. Well, it's not from me. It's one that I found that I think is well worth talking about. A major new study published in JAMA challenges one of the most entrenched assumptions about youth mental health, that more screen time leads to worse outcomes. Tracking over 4,000 kids from age 10 to age 14, researchers instead found no direct link between how many hours children spent on devices and suicidal behavior. Instead, the study identified a different culprit: addictive patterns of use, such as compulsively checking phones or feeling distress without access. In short, it's not just how long kids are online, it's how unable they are to log off. In this study, 4,285 children were tracked, again from age 10 to 14. They were regularly screened for signs of compulsive use, the inability to stop, or emotional distress when they disconnected. And by age 14, so again, for those 4 years that they were tracked, 17.9% of those more than 4K children reported suicidal thoughts. 5.1% showed suicidal behaviors like planning or attempts. And in this study, there was no direct correlation between the time spent on the screens and suicidality. But instead, there seemed to be a link between when the children reported addictive behavior and reported feeling an addiction to the device, that suicidality rates increased. It seems to be that this is the first study to look at addictive use as the root cause instead of just time spent. So when it came to screen time, they looked at different patterns of screen time. And even if a child spent more than typical hours on a device, or fewer than typical hours on a device, if that child also reported that they were feeling the desire to get to their device or distress when they didn't have it, that was the actual common factor, as opposed to just using it later if they needed to. So whenever they looked at what actually counts as addictive use, feeling unable to stop using a device, needing to use it more and more, anxiety or distress when access is denied. And this was present across social media, gaming, and phone use. Some children exhibited that addictive behavior even if their screen time was, in comparison, relatively low. This doesn't surprise me that addictive use was more common among kids whose brains were still developing impulse control. I mean, that is a huge factor in this age range. And nearly half of the participants had high addictive phone use by age 11. So the risk of suicidal behavior, this is according to Dr. Zhao, the risk of suicidal behavior clearly increased to a doubling of the levels. And so they kind of had to recheck regularly in on these children. So again, was between the ages of 10 and 14, and by 11, that addictive behavior had already started. There, of course, is a lot to look at here in the long term, but it is important to sort of frame this in the discussion that we've seen up to this point, which has so much focused, I think, on just kids are using their devices and they're using them all the time, and they're using them at school, they're using them on the toilet, and they're using them there, and they're using them there, blah, 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 blah. And how it's so much, there may be more to it than simply that. And finding sort of underlying patterns and causes is an important aspect of it. I am not the parent of children. And so I have not had the joy one must have in trying to figure out when and how and why and all of the, I just would love to hear, if it's something that you want to talk about, Jen, how did you approach tech use, and when did it come along for you? And, you know, the conversation around screen time and everything else. And of course, your thoughts on this study.
Yeah, well, I think the study is very interesting because this is sort of something, and this is an internal, family issue that we've had too, trying to understand the difference between screen time and benefits of screen time. And this has always been sort of my argument is, it's not about, I've always felt it's not about how long they're on it, it's about what they're doing on it. That because in today's society, especially with COVID-19, which my kids were smack in the middle of with high school and middle school, it was impossible to do less than 6 hours of screen time a day because they're on their computers learning for school. I mean, that's not the type of screen time you feel like you need to limit. But we're being told that too much screen time is damaging our children. So yeah, there's been so much parental guilt over the last 5 to 10 years around screen time. And the onus has been so much on the parent to make sure that your child has, spends all its time outside, and not any time on the screen. And whereas now I think what this helps do is push the onus back onto companies and device makers and those people creating the content to be much more mindful about the type of content created for children under certain ages, and to have some of these limits and we're starting to see this, like limits that kind of will help you make sure, there's not a lot out there that helps you understand what type of age range an app or a service is for. That's been like when we grew up with TV and movies, our parents were given the rating system to help them make it clear what was suitable and what wasn't. And anything that was unsuitable on TV wasn't shown until after 8 p.m. There were much clearer guidelines for parents to understand what kind of content their children should be exposed to. With apps, there are age ratings for apps, but they're very loose and they don't really provide a lot of detail, and they're quite limited for younger ones. For example, you can't download YouTube unless you have unrestricted app downloads 17, it's a 17 or over, which obviously, because YouTube has all sorts of crap on it. But once you download YouTube, you can put on age restrictions. So it's this just needs to be more to help the parent at the sort of interaction stage, and not you should just keep the screen away from your child. It's a struggle, definitely, because there are the reasons that children in this society today, it is very hard to not give your child some form of communication device before the age of 15 or 16. That when there's a group, organization, movement called Wait Until 8th, which is the idea, don't give your child a phone until 8th grade, which is, so my child just finished 8th grade. So that's 13. Okay. But then both my kids played varsity sports. So they were when they were in 7th grade. So they were with high schoolers who were all communicating over, they communicated all of the sports information over
all
the
schedules, all of the, everything's taking place there.
And then they were going off on 7-hour round trips to sports. And I'm supposed to just put them on a bus and say, see you later. Right. In this, it was hard. You can lock phones down. We did that a lot, especially early on with my son. I scared him silly with a few internet horror stories to make sure he understood the dangers. But screen time limits that are built into phones are useless and crap, and so easy for kids to work around. And Apple, you need to fix that. And then what we are seeing now, which I think is a good shift, is screen time tools within apps, so that parents can go in and put specific limits on specific apps inside the app rather than inside the ecosystem of the phone, which we need to see more of. Now we're also seeing more of teen account type services. Instagram now has a teen account. There are, but my point being that this onus should not just be on the parent. This needs to come from the companies as well. And we do need to probably see some legislation and some lawmaking around understanding the impacts and how companies should approach their product and how they present it to children. Because right now, I think there's a lot of, get them young and then they'll be a customer for life. It's very much akin to the cigarette industry in the 60s and 70s. So
yeah,
and this just makes it even more so. Like, it's proving it's about the addiction, not so much the time. And that's the scary part.
Yeah, so when I look back at sort of the landscape of what would have been early tech, but really was like early media, radio and surrounding technologies, what we saw was the US government seeing this public resource available and saying, okay, this is good, but also it needs to be regulated.
Yeah.
And so the government came in and regulated these systems and put them in place. Hollywood started to become very popular. Movies, the moving pictures started to become very popular. And as that was happening, they realized that they did not want to have the government regulating them. So they said, we will regulate ourselves. They introduced the rating system for films and held to that with every fiber of their being, so that there was never an opening in the armor, right? That the US government could say, actually, you failed to regulate, so now we're coming in. And that has worked. Then we saw the video game industry do the same to a certain extent. There was a time period where, because of other things that were going on in the world, video games were being blamed for violence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there was kind of even more pushback and more kind of changes to how video games are regulated. But again, an industry regulating itself because they feared the federal government coming in and doing it for them and holding steadfast to these rules. And fast forward to now, and these big tech companies don't want to work together and figure out rating systems and hold to them because they're so big and they have so much money that not only do they not have to regulate themselves to keep the federal government from coming in and regulating them, but they can just pay the federal government to not come in and regulate them. And that is horrible. And this like, you just get to do what you want, and then you hope that the federal government doesn't come and give you a slap on the wrist. And yes, we are literally just now starting to see, or have just started to see, kind of a change in that. There are bigger penalties, and especially, thank goodness, overseas, we're seeing more pushback there. But yeah, when no one is agreeing on how these things should, you've got Apple doing its nutrition labels and implementing these things, but Google's not doing it the same. And Meta has all of these have their own rules and regulations, even though it's all this big techosphere. And
Meta's
arguably
the worst, I'm going to say. The big issue I had with tech, and this wasn't phones, but was the Quest 2.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. And this is where it kind of all kicked, because this was all during COVID. And, it even says in this report, it's kind of elitist the way that they push screen time limits, because there are parents that just don't, they need, it's a really useful tool to help keep your child occupied.
If both parents are working for longer hours than typical, and if you don't have the resources in place to understand how best to support your child, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
And it was very, and this is what happened. I mean, I'm quite tech savvy, and we got the Quest 2. I was thinking of it as like a video game device. And this was during COVID. So again, great, to have a new experience. You can step out into the world, so to speak, without actually doing it. Yeah.
And my daughter just loved it. She like glommed right onto it and was playing the games, Beat Saber and all that. I was like, this is great. And then she started spending more and more time talking to people on it. And I was like, who are we talking to?
Who? Yeah.
And, I'd always, with my son, I had always been super strict with, like, when he got an Xbox, I was like, you can't be friends with anyone you don't know in real life, or at least is like, someone that knows them in real life.
Yeah.
And it was a few weeks before I realized that she had joined a game called, it's not a game, and I can't even remember the name now.
Horizon Worlds?
No, but it's VR chat.
Oh,
it's just a
and
game
that's just
called
VR Chat. Oh,
and it's just built into the Quest. I think you might have to download it, but it's like pushed. It's like a meta. It is Zuck's sort of like, this is our world where we all go hang out. But everyone hangs out in this place. And you don't know who or what. I mean, it got nasty quick. And I took it away and just never used the thing since. But like, I had no idea. Like, there was no warning, no labels, like this, there was no education out there. It didn't, even as someone that understands a lot about technology, I was sort of blindsided by this system. And I think it was my son who finally brought it up. He's like, do you know what she can do in there?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, no, I thought it was just a game.
Yeah, exactly. And you're thinking, I mean, you're seeing Beat Saber, you're seeing those, and you're not thinking, especially
things.
Because even if it is a chat, you would think you have to add friends something like that.
Was like
for it to just be
global, like a global. You just walk in and there are just people there you're talking to. It was, I
don't even want that in real life. So I'm impressed that there's a bunch of people around. Come on.
But yeah, so that was definitely an eye opener for me, because and again, there are so many great things about the Meta Quest device. Like, it's not about the technology. It's about the tools within it and what the experiences you're having, and there are good and there are bad. And it's just like the internet. There's good out there and there's bad out there. So we need more help from the companies, for sure. There needs to be more industry regulation, especially helping educate parents on the type of content and some kind of guidance, like rating system. I mean, it's there, but it's not granular enough to any extent. Like this app, VR Chat, I believe, is like anyone can use, because it's not blood and guts. There's no, none of the kind of the things that you would expect to kick it into like an NR or an 18 or an over 16 kind of rating, because it's just a place to come and chat. But we need those kind of, like, how open is this? What kind of connections can people make? And like Roblox. Roblox has done quite a good job with that in terms of parental controls. But again, you have to know to go in there and set all of these. So it's a lot. But parents, if your kids have these devices, parents need to be able to take these types of actions, and companies need to be able to offer better controls for parents, for sure, because these types of things can get addictive, as this study that we're talking about explains, that sort of dopamine hit that adults get too. This is not just for kids, I'm going to say, because adults are addicted to their phones as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's the difference is now we're seeing this come into play at a time when the brain is still developing, and in particular when it comes to the ability or inability to delay gratification, and how delayed gratification is such an important skill to learn when you're young. It's a coping mechanism, and if you don't have the opportunity to do that, it can have such an impact. I'm glad that these studies are going on to kind of dig in deeper, because it does mean that we can start to look at more legislation, and in this case, look at legislation that, instead of just targeting screen access directly, will also look at maybe the underlying factors, that it's about more than just screen access alone, but could have to do with behaviors. Given the context of the conversation, if you or someone you know is struggling, you can call or text 988 in the US. You can also head to findahelpline.com if you are outside of the United States to be able to reach someone who can help. We are going to take another quick break, and then we'll be back for our final sort of silly story of the week. I want to tell you about ThreatLocker, who is bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. Ransomware is harming businesses worldwide through phishing emails, infected downloads, malicious websites, and RDP exploits. You don't want to be the next victim. ThreatLocker's Zero Trust platform takes a proactive, deny-by-default approach that blocks every unauthorized action, protecting you from both known and unknown threats. Trusted by global enterprises like JetBlue and Port of Vancouver, ThreatLocker shields you from zero-day exploits and supply chain attacks while providing complete audit trails for compliance. ThreatLocker's innovative ring-fencing technology isolates critical applications from weaponization, stopping ransomware and limiting lateral movements within your network. ThreatLocker works across all industries, supports Mac environments, provides 24/7 US-based support, and enables comprehensive visibility and control. Mark Tolson, the IT director for the city of Champaign, Illinois, had this to say about ThreatLocker. ThreatLocker provides that extra key to block anomalies that nothing else can do. If bad actors got in and tried to execute something, I take comfort in knowing ThreatLocker will stop that. So stop worrying about cyber threats. Get unprecedented protection quickly, easily, and cost-effectively with ThreatLocker. Visit threatlocker.com/twit to get a free 30-day trial and learn more about how ThreatLocker can help mitigate unknown threats and ensure compliance. That's threatlocker.com/twit. And we thank ThreatLocker for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, we are back from the break. And Jennifer Pattison, Tuohy, are you buying a new phone?
No.
No. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I will admit I am interested in MVNOs, but probably not this one. I have been thinking about switching my entire family off Verizon because it's costing me a fortune. But there is a new MVNO, well, a new plan, a new service on sale from our president, Trump Mobile, the 47 plan, which is $47.45 a month, which if you're a Trump fan, you will
the
get
numbers.
the joke.
Oh dear.
And unfortunately, so my site, The Verge, did a lot of coverage of this week and sort of dove deep into this plan. And the headline was Trump Mobile is a bad deal. So there are much better deals for this type of service out there, according to our research, because there are many of these MVNOs that use some of the large networks and resell the service. And apparently $47.45 per month is not a good deal. But the really interesting part about this, I think, for most tech nerds is, what is this phone? So Trump Mobile launched with a new plan and a new phone that Trump Mobile says is fully made in America, which it's not. It can't possibly be.
It couldn't possibly be made in America.
Yeah, proudly made in
Where?
America, it just said there. And we did some digging. Alison Johnson, who is our phone reviewer, went through all of the various inexpensive Android phones that can be found around the rest of the world to see which one it most likely is that Trump Mobile has said it's going to be launching with this plan. And it's $499, I believe, was the price of the phone, which is relatively cheap. And they said built in the United States, although there were some comments from one of the Trump sons who is helping run this later saying that the plan is to eventually build it entirely in the United States. So we shall see if that ever actually happens. But yes, because there's one phone that's made in the US and it's called the Liberty phone and it's like $2,000. So the idea of a $500 phone being manufactured in the US, I don't know, maybe Trump's going to subsidize it for everyone. But yeah, there's a few guesses on our website. The Doge, it looks like a Doge Note 58 or a Ulefone Note 18. I have never heard of any of these.
Ulefone. You never heard of the Ulefone?
7, the blue G84. That's the one I'm going for because it has like a nice marbly, shiny back, which is what. But the photo on the release of this did look like a really badly photoshopped phone. So it doesn't look like this phone actually exists yet, but
so not even the gold looking, we don't even think that that's done yet.
I mean, does that look like a real phone to you?
No. No.
I mean, look at the lenses and where's the flash? And
the lenses are cracking me up. That's a fidget spinner stuck to the side of a phone.
But yeah, it was kind of, and also I think if you read the fine print, it does actually say right at the bottom that this is not Trump Mobile is not associated with the Trump organization in any way or something like that. It's like a what's the word? Where, like, not a subsidiary, but we've licensed the name.
Got it.
So, yeah, I mean,
if anyone wants to license my name, get in touch.
It's been run by Eric, though, I think. I think it's Eric. What's the other one called?
I couldn't tell you. I tried to know as little as possible about them.
But yeah.
Okay, so wait, it's run by one of the sons, but it has
not
it's
part of the Trump organization.
I don't know. That's cool.
Yeah, there it goes. It says it somewhere down there. Yeah, Trump name. Yeah, it is just trademarks. It's not actually Trump himself, but Trump, it's like the Trump Bible, I guess, right? That was
right.
It's all like legal stuff, I suppose, but people are going to buy this.
Legalese, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so
who is going to buy this? Who is the market for this, I guess? You get, what do you get for this for 47, 45 a month?
What do you get?
20 gigabytes of high-speed cell service and hotspot data. You get unlimited talk and text and international calling. But that does seem, I mean,
except in countries that we don't trade with.
Right. But like Google Fi, you get 30 gig of data for $35 a month. So, Boost Mobile, you get 30 gig for $25 a month. So this is not a particularly good deal. And then you buy the phone on top of it. I don't think you get any sort of benefit out of that. But I know I am not a cell phone plan data nerd, but my colleagues are. So there's lots of great info on the website if you want to dig a little deeper. But yeah, this just feels icky. The whole being, marketing the president and into, in products that you buy because you're a fan. It just, that's fine for like Sabrina Carpenter, but not for the president of the United States.
The Sabrina Carpenter phone. Jennifer Pattison would be all on board. I love it. Well, okay. So here's the thing. I think now my biggest concern, honestly, is that I buy this phone and it doesn't even have 30 gigs of data. Because if we can lie about one thing, we can lie about any of the aspects of this. So yeah. I wouldn't even know if I'm getting that amount of data. And if that's it's 46, 40, or yeah,
47,
it is
45.
47. Thank you. I don't know why I was off by one error. 47, 45, his presidencies. And are there going to be a bunch of added fees that we, aren't prepared for? I wanted to say though, back to your earlier talk, because you also talk about, how in this other piece, Allison Johnson, as you mentioned, talks about how Donald Trump and Ryan Reynolds can easily sell you phone plans and how it's about MVNOs.
It's become a thing. Celebrity phones.
we should talk about
blame Ryan Reynolds.
We should talk about MVNOs though, for people who don't understand them. So we'll talk about that next.
Yeah.
So MVNOs are sort of riding on the services provided by the big mobile carriers. Yeah. And because they kind of buy packages of data and cut costs in other ways, they can end up saving you money. My significant other uses Mint Mobile and has now for some time and loves it. It saves him.
That's the Ryan Reynolds one, right?
That's a Ryan Reynolds one. And that saves him. And I should mention Mint Mobile has been a sponsor on the network before. So I just want to note that. But regardless, he loves the service and it's, again, saved him a bunch of money, especially when I sit down next to him with my AT&T bill and go, I don't understand.
I still haven't figured out. I know. I need to sit down and do the math. But yeah, the idea is it saves you money, but potentially you don't get like that. I think the biggest thing is, right,
support is usually pretty bad.
Oh, okay. That's one I didn't know about because I haven't actually done it yet. But so for example, I have Verizon is our major carrier in this area. I mean, we have all the carriers, but like you get the best reception on Verizon. So I've looked at moving to Xfinity Mobile because I also have to have their service for my internet because it's my only option. And they're an MVNO of Verizon. So if you move to Xfinity, you're getting Verizon service. But what can happen, and this is what they sort of say in the fine print, is that when networks are busy, the MVNO customers might be deprioritized or get, they'll have less access to the servers. And I live in an area where we have hurricanes, and my husband is a firefighter, and he really needs, like, in fact, he gets priority service with Verizon.
I was going to say, does he get like a register? That's cool. I'd read about that somewhere, that there's sort of a blessing that emergency folks can get. That's really neat.
So that they can more likely to get access. I mean, in a hurricane, quite often, no one can.
No one will, but yeah.
It's not even about volume. It's more about infrastructure. But still, considering all scenarios, we've kind of stuck with Verizon for that reason. But it does feel like a small reason when I look at my $230 bill every month. And I'm like, maybe I should switch us. Because there's 4 of us on our plan, and it's very expensive. But yeah, they are great for, and the other issue I've had with MVNOs, which seems to have got better, is that hotspotting was limited. And I use hotspotting because I like to work from different places.
You use it a lot? Yeah, I don't, you shouldn't switch then.
Yeah, that's what I've been. Yeah. So the last time I talked to Xfinity, they said that that's now unlimited, but I don't know.
Unlimited at 0.2 kilobits per second or something.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe you could end up not that that's what this show is for, but maybe you could end up saving money by moving the family members who don't need that priority
just put my kids on the
exactly. Don't tell them I said that.
Uncle Mikah, it was a good idea.
No. And we actually thought he was cool until now. But maybe that's how you do it, because it does. It gets so pricey. And that's the other thing. He has an Apple Watch, cellular, can't use it with the cellular Apple Watch.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I think that might change though, because it has been acquired by T-Mobile, and I think that could potentially move it into that area. But yeah, that's been one of his frustrating aspects.
It's a funny thing when you're like, so the way they sell it too, they're using the same line. So why wouldn't you pay less?
Yeah.
Which is what the ads all say.
Yeah. And you're going, why wouldn't I? Why am I not paying less? And I'm having to confront it in myself.
You have to dig down and I've generally heard, and this is very biased and mean, and I'm sorry, but it's great if you're single and
if you don't have other people,
like one phone. Mm-hmm. But for families, not so much, because you do get a lot of benefits, like breaks, deals with
exactly, more devices that you have, the less expensive each new device is, and all that kind of thing. And then also the deals for new phones and trade-ins are often better on main carriers. That was the other
thing, because we break a lot of phones.
Oh yeah, you should stay where you are then, I think. I don't know how we got here, but I love it. I love talking with you, Jen. It's always a pleasure. So much fun.
We covered everything today.
We did. We have the gamut of tech news. If people would like to follow you online and check out all of your prolific and wonderful work, where do they go to do that?
So you can find everything that I write at theverge.com. And then I also am on the socials, mainly at Smart Home Mama, although you might find me at JP2E at a couple places. Blue Sky and Threads are probably my main haunts. But yeah, theverge.com. And then I'm just going to do a little plug for this summer. I'm going to be doing some guest hosting on The Verge's podcast, The Vergecast.
That's so exciting.
You can catch me on there a couple episodes this summer. So
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you again soon.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Alrighty, folks, the Tech News Weekly has wrapped. I don't know why that took me so long to say, but the show publishes every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. That is where you can go to subscribe to the show in audio and video formats. I want to remind you all about Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit. When you join the club, we have monthly subscriptions and yearly subscriptions. You gain access to some awesome benefits. Every single one of our shows ad-free. It's just the content, none of the ads. You also gain access to the Twit Plus bonus feeds. Yes, that's right, feeds, including our clips, our news, and our shows, and access to the members-only Discord server, a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also those of us here at Twit. There you also gain access to special Club Twit events. I just had my crafting corner last night. We had another great time making more crafts, hanging out, having a good chat. And you also can watch our live coverage of special tech news events. All of that is only available to you as a member of Club Twit. So join the club, twit.tv/clubtwit. If you'd like to follow me online, I'm at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. And be sure to check out my other shows, many of which publish later today. Hands on Apple, formerly Hands on Mac. Hands on Tech will publish on Sunday, and iOS Today as well. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you again next week for another episode of Tech News Weekly. Bye-bye.
The tech world moves fast, and you need to keep up for your business, for your life. The best way to do that? Twit.tv. On This Week in Tech, I bring together tech's best and brightest minds to help you understand what just happened and prepare for what's happening next. It's your first podcast of the week and the last word in tech. Cybersecurity experts know they can't miss a minute of Security Now every week with Steve Gibson. What you don't know could really hurt your business, but there's nothing Steve Gibson doesn't know. Tune in Security Now every Wednesday. Every Thursday, industry expert Mikah Sargent brings you interviews with tech journalists who make or break the top stories of the week on Tech News Weekly. And if you use Apple products, you won't want to miss the premier Apple podcast, now in its 20th year, Mac Break Weekly. Then there's Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. They are the best connected journalists covering Microsoft. And every week they bring you their insight and wit on Windows Weekly. Build your tech intelligence week after week with the best in the business. Your seat at tech's most entertaining and informative table is waiting at twit.tv. Subscribe now.